my God, why have you forsaken me? This is the moment when Jesus, affixed to the cross, lets out the cry of the absurd. This is the moment when Christianity breaks. It is born out of the contradiction between the yearning for understanding and the irrational silence of reality. Up to this moment, the life of Jesus of Nazareth makes sense. Now people call, "Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God," but he doesn't come down. Now the mathematical cruelty of things has broken through. All the stories and hopes of mankind have collapsed. Now the fullness of compassion has met the shattered face of the incomprehensible. Now he has become the absurd hero. Amidst the desolation of a Europe in flames, Albert Camus writes a book. He is surrounded by rubble and corpses, and yet he cannot release the all-too-human yearning for understanding, the urge to justify this arbitrary carnage, to solve this horrific puzzle. But the Second World War cannot be denied. It is too overwhelming, too all-encompassing. The universe has been drained of meaning, broken by a suffering too great. Most people will flee into denial. The tension is too much. They deny themselves or they deny this world. But Camus stays at his post. He will not abandon his reason. He digs in his feet, steels his nerves, and stares down the barrel of the absurd. He stands in this absurd world and points out its ephemeral character. He seeks his way amidst these ruins. In the myth of Sisyphus, Camus weaves a philosophy around the terrible awakening which grips contemporary man. So long as the mind keeps silent in the motionless world of its hopes, everything is reflected and arranged in the unity of its nostalgia. But with its first move, this world cracks and tumbles. An infinite number of shimmering fragments is offered to the understanding. We must despair of ever reconstructing the familiar, calm surface which would give us peace of heart. It is an awakening to the contradiction between two irreducible terms: the irrational, the human nostalgia, and the absurd that is born of their encounter. It is that divorce between the mind that desires and the world that disappoints. My nostalgia for unity, this fragmented universe, and the contradiction that binds them together. Camus calls the absurd space a desert. It is a place where most men refuse to stay, unable to follow its truth to the bitter end. Those waterless deserts where thought reaches its confines. Many others, yes indeed, how eager they were to get out of them. The real effort is to stay there, rather, insofar as that is possible, and to examine closely the odd vegetation of those distant regions. In the year 300, a damned company of monks entered into these regions. For the desert fathers and mothers, the world had become complacent. The great existential conflict had been resolved. They refused to accept this false comfort and volunteered themselves into a martyrdom. They entered into that landscape which couldn't be rationalized. They reignited the cry of the absurd. Under the bare desert sun, all that had been taken for granted is cast into doubt. The solace of worldly certainty is stripped from the monk. Camus calls this that colourless desert where all certainties have become stones. St. Anthony the Great is the forerunner of Christian monasticism, being one of the first to enter into the desert. Some elders once came to Abbot Anthony, and there was with them also Abbot Joseph. Wishing to test them, Abbot Anthony brought the conversation around to the Holy Scriptures, and he began from the youngest to ask them the meaning of this or that text. Each one replied as best he could, but Abbot Anthony said to them, "You have not got it yet." After them all, he asked Abbot Joseph, "What about you? What do you say this text means?" Abbot Joseph replied, "I know not." Then Abbot Anthony said, "Truly, Abbot Joseph alone has found the way, for he replies he knows not." At the heart of Christianity, there is an absurd paradox. In the end, Jesus has his resurrection, his suffering has its justification, his crucifixion is redeemed. On the other hand, our suffering seems useless. Do not have to spend much time looking at the inexhaustible list of innocent human tragedy to see this, to realise the arbitrary cruelty of much human fate. How can we possibly resolve this gap? The Desert Fathers say that we can't. That is their genius. The absurd gift of the resurrection is that the game is now infinite. Life becomes inexhaustible. The approach towards perfection is asymptotic. There is an eternal, unbridgeable gap, but the joy of one's life is to try to close it. To be aware of the impossibility, but to try nevertheless, is humility. It is that most implausible virtue. For the more one becomes conscious of their hope, the more one becomes conscious of their weakness. Matthias said, "The nearer a man comes to God, the more he sees himself to be a sinner." To have a burning consciousness of one's desolation, the necessity of perfection, and the unbridgeable gap, and to dedicate a lifetime in this struggle, this is where the monk becomes an absurd hero. They said of Abbot Pambo that in the very hour when he departed this life he said to the holy men who stood by him, "From the time I came to this place in the desert and built me a cell and dwelt here, I do not remember eating bread that was not earned by the work of my own hands, nor do I remember saying anything for which I was sorry even until this hour. And thus I go to the Lord as one who has not even made a beginning in the service of God." This absurd situation is the womb and crucible of the deepest ethical paradox, the quest for an authentic humility. It is unbearable, and yet the monks choose it. At its heart, they enter into a cacophonous but silent land. Abbot Lot came to Abbot Joseph and said, "Father, according as I am able, I keep my little rule and my little fast, my prayer, meditation and contemplative silence. And according as I am able, I strive to cleanse my heart of thoughts. Now what more should I do?" The elder rose up in reply and stretched out his hands to heaven, and his fingers became like 10 lamps of fire. He said, "Why not be totally changed into fire?" In the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus contemplates his unbearable circumstance. "If, therefore, I want to preserve it, I can, through a constant awareness, ever revived, ever alert." The call of the absurd hero is to stay conscious of the essential passion of man, torn between his urge towards unity and the clear vision he may have of the walls enclosing him. Jesus does not turn away from his situation. He fixes his attention on it even until he is deeply grieved, even to death. The absurd hero guards his lucidity, but for most men this is intolerable. Indeed, the disciples soon slip into the unconscious and fall asleep. "So you could not stay awake with me 1 hour." But for Jesus, the lucidity that was to constitute his torture at the same time crowns his victory. For the Christian, the infinite distance of Christ's virtue is the absurd, but this gap is also the birthplace of an authentic humility. The monk knows that he lives in a state in which his whole being is exerted towards accomplishing nothing. And yet, for those who follow this absurd hero, the struggle itself towards the heights is enough to fill a man's heart. It is the path to an impossible charity, where one admits their destitution but is not ruled by it. It is the space of an impossible faith, where one lives in doubt without denying it. And it is the source of an impossible hope, where one struggles in despair but does not succumb to it. Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Feed my lambs. A second time he came to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He said to him, Yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Tend my sheep. He said to him the third time, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter felt hurt because he said to him the third time, Do you love me? And he said to him, Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you. Jesus said to him, Feed my sheep.